have a 9 o'clock meeting, you guys.
Attorney General, we've heard the president use the word insurrectionist repeatedly. What is his bar for invoking the Insurrection Act, and can you describe some of the conversations around that particular topic that have been underway?
Well, sure. Right now it's keeping California safe. If Gavin Newsom isn't going to keep California safe, we are. You know, they imposed a curfew last night. I think that helped a bit. But today, we wanted them to declare, they didn't declare an economic disaster out there with all of the businesses. Had they done that, Kelly Loeffler and the Small Business Association could have come in and helped, given federal aid to all of these businesses in California. We've been seeing on the news all of these drugstores getting robbed, getting looted. The Apple store just got raided. I mean, we're all watching this live on the news. And this isn't just looting to me. You think people just run in, take something, leave, and nothing happens? We're using the Hobbs Act. We are charging robbery to protect Californians under this. If you loot a store, we are going to charge you with robbery under the Hobbs Act, and you're looking at maximum 20 years in prison. But we're going to prosecute you for that. Identifying people now, it's a different world. The guy with the cinder blocks, we were able to identify him. Great FBI work, DEA, ATF, all working together with ICE, with Homeland Security. Great partnership out there. And our National Guard, to wrap back to your question, our National Guard, our Marines, they have come in to protect our buildings, the Marines have come in to protect the National Guard. It is total chaos out there. We're all watching it on the news. And, you know, they're throwing bricks. We had a law enforcement officer injured. They're throwing bricks at cars, and this is very orchestrated. They're not just cinder bricks. They had hammers in place. They're breaking them up. We've all seen on the news where the sidewalks, they're coming in with these huge sledgehammers, breaking up the sidewalks and taking these huge pieces of concrete, throwing them off a bridge, throwing them at people. It's truly a miracle that no one has been seriously injured or killed yet. But we're going to do everything within our legal authority to protect our law enforcement officers and all the people in California right now. You know, you guys, this is serious out there. We want to protect people. We want to protect law enforcement and all the hard-working people there who are trying to go to work every day. Their businesses are shuttered. They can't do anything because of this, and it has to stop.
Can I follow up on the legal authority part of that? Let's ask that again. What is the threshold for invoking the Insurrection Act? Beyond California,
sure.
Are you seeing examples in other cities where the president might have to consider?
Sure. Well, first, in other cities, we've seen it in New York, but what happened in New York was very different. NYPD came in right away. NYPD came in and shut it down. We all believe in peaceful protests. You saw New York. There were peaceful protests happening in New York. Much different situation. So law enforcement, they need to have their hands untied where they can do their jobs. Right now in California, what we're doing is working by bringing in the National Guard, by bringing in the Marines right now to back them up, to protect our federal buildings, to protect the highways, to protect the citizens. So right now in California, we're at a good point. We're not scared to go further. We're not frightened to do something else if we need to. Right now we're trying to.
With hammers banging up sidewalks? Is it something else? Like what's the threshold for?
Well, right now we're hoping it's going to get under control. We hope the curfew will work, and we're going to continue to do everything we can to keep California safe if the government of California is not going to help them. One more question.
One question. The administration has talked a lot about defending law enforcement over the last week or so that these protests are going on. But you've been criticized for having a double standard with the president pardoning all these people who attacked police officers on January 6th in his first day in office. How do you answer that criticism?
Well, this is very different. These are people out there hurting people in California right now. This is ongoing, no longer. We're going to protect them. We're going to do everything we can to prosecute violent criminals in California. California is burning. These people are waving Mexican flags, yet they don't want anyone to go back to Mexico. They're burning American flags. This is the United States of America, and we're going to protect Americans. We're going to protect all citizens out there. Thank you. You guys have a great day. Thank you.
Repeatedly criticized the job that Newsom has done and said if it was not for him sending in the National Guard, that Los Angeles would be burning to the ground. I want to bring in CNN's Priscilla Alvarez back here with me, also our chief and law enforcement and intelligence analyst, John Miller. But Scott Jennings and Kate Bedingfield, I want to start with you because, Kate, obviously, to hear what we just did from Governor Newsom, he went far beyond just what has been happening in terms of Los Angeles and the protests there and how the president and the White House have responded. I mean, he has essentially was attacking everything that has happened over the last several months that Donald Trump has been in office. He said the moment that we feared has arrived.
Yeah, I think he's using this moment to channel some of the energy that a faction of the Democratic base wants to see from Democratic leaders. I think this is the kind of thing that people who feel frustrated that the Democrats are not taking on Trump more directly, this is exactly the kind of thing they want to see. Now, I think the question here, though, more broadly for Democrats politically is this an effective message? I think at the end of the day, what is, we know that the larger argument about Trump's lawlessness, about abuse of power, it can resonate. I thought it was very effective the way he called out Trump's hypocrisy around protecting law enforcement on January 6th. But we also know from the election that we just saw transpire in 2024 that this argument about democracy, it doesn't hold the kind of urgency in people's lives across the country that it does for some who are the kind of most vocal champions of the Democratic Party. And I think Democrats have to reconcile that. So, when Gavin Newsom has an opportunity to command national attention, as he does right now, and to take on Trump directly, there is an opportunity there to go back to the economy, to go back to what people across the country are feeling in their day-to-day lives. And I think that is the challenge from a political messaging standpoint that Democrats have to reconcile here and find a way forward on.
Scott Jennings, you saw and heard Governor Newsom condemning what President Trump has been doing in office, not just in regards to Los Angeles, but also overall. He also condemned the violence and the vandalism that we've seen playing out in Los Angeles amid these protests and said it's not acceptable. What was your take on that speech?
It's amazing to me. First of all, this guy's the governor of a state, and it has got one of its most important cities burning on his watch. And he's out here launching a presidential campaign. I mean, there's no other way to listen to what happened and not conclude that he just launched his presidential campaign on top of this lawlessness that's going on in California. He governs a failed state. He sits atop of a failed state. And he sits, I guess, at the leadership right now of a political party that's wanting to coddle the illegal invasion of our country that's causing what's happening. It's not particularly controversial for Donald Trump to enforce federal law, our immigration laws, and yet to Democrats and to Gavin Newsom, it's an affront to them for the President of the United States to enforce federal law. I mean, he went down a litany of things that have nothing to do with what's happening in California. All that's happening in California is that a bunch of foreign nationals have occupied large swaths of the United States. One city is burning, and the President of the United States is trying to bring order. That's all that's happening. And we get this litany of complaints from Gavin Newsom about everything but how much the Democrats in California have failed. I don't think it's going to resonate with the American people. I think it's going to look opportunistic, and people are going to wonder, why in the world is the governor of California complaining about Harvard when one of his cities is on fire?
But Kate, I mean, the criticism, well, a lot of those protesters have been peaceful, I should note, as we're watching what's happening in LA. Scott, just to put a point on what you said there. But Kate, what we had heard from Democrats here in Washington earlier, like Senator John Fetterman saying, the Democrats needed to have a stronger response. They needed to condemn the violence, what was happening. I mean, the governor did that there, and also was heavily critical of the immigration efforts by the Trump administration, saying that Trump is going far beyond what they promised on the campaign trail to go after criminals first.
Yeah, Gavin Newsom was extremely critical of any protesters who were violent in that speech. He dedicated a chunk of the speech to asking people to be peaceful and to criticizing those who were being violent. And I think you've seen that across the board from Democrats who have, I think the idea that Senator Fetterman sort of put out there that Democrats haven't been criticizing the violence is just not true. It's just not borne out by what Democrats have been saying. I do think across the board, I take his point, his larger point, that people need to feel that Democrats want to see peace here. They want to see peaceful protests. They want to see order. They're not against the idea of law enforcement protecting their communities. We know that people want to see their communities protected, and Democrats do need to make clear that they support it. But I think it would be impossible and an inaccurate assessment to watch what Gavin Newsom just said and suggest that he was somehow condoning violent protest when he quite clearly said the opposite.
Priscilla, just on what he was saying at the beginning, he was accusing ICE and the Trump administration of using unmarked cars, of arresting and detaining gardeners, seamstresses, dishwashers. He said that Donald Trump has employed a military dragnet across Los Angeles, talking about essentially how the immigration efforts are being carried out. What have you heard from sources in terms of what that's actually looked like?
Well, Trump's immigration agenda is ultimately going to be judged on two things: numbers, which the president himself has said he wants to execute mass deportation, and also methods, as was the case during his first term. And what we have seen over the course of the last few weeks is that while the administration has publicly touted their immigration crackdown and released photos to that effect, privately, I'm being told that officials are extremely frustrated. They don't think that the officers are doing enough to arrest immigrants, undocumented immigrants in the United States. So what does that mean? That means that they have to go after everyone and anyone in these various locations, and that speaks to the method. So what the governor was saying there is something that immigrant advocates, and including some former ICE officials, are concerned about, is just picking up people in these various locations, including ones they're supposed to go to for check-ins, like immigration hearings and their USCIS check-ins, to arrest people. And what does that mean moving forward? And ultimately, again, this is going to come down to the numbers and the methods and the ways that they'll be judged on that front.
And John Miller, on that comment that stood out to me with Governor Newsom saying that the president is dragging a military dragnet, that was the quote that he used, across Los Angeles. As you've looked at this, one thing that the president pointed to earlier today in the Oval Office when he was talking to reporters are comments made by the police chief in LA saying they were overwhelmed on Saturday night, basically as part of his justification for what we've seen happen here. What have you made of the response from the LAPD compared to the military that has been sent in to LA?
Well, I think that's a really important fact check, because the president also said that, the National Guard got there and they brought order to it. The National Guard did not bring order to it. The National Guard surrounded the federal building and then became a focal point of protest where the LAPD had to actually bring order to that. The other thing is, and I have a lot of respect for Scott Jennings, he's my friend, but LA is not burning, okay? 5 self-driving cars were burned, a couple of police cars were set on fire. That's not good. But we can't use terms that evoke images from the 1992 riots. What this is all about, I think Gavin Newsom's point was, we started with an idea that they would be rounding up criminals, and then when the numbers weren't delivering what they were looking for, they started going into factories and big restaurants, and that's become a spark.
John Miller, thank you for that. That's helpful. And of course, stay with us as we are.
You don't want one bill, you want to split it. Is that still your position?
Well, the good news is we all want to accomplish the same thing. We all know that federal government spending is completely out of control. Deficits are way too high, and we need to bend that deficit curve down. I've had very productive talks with the president in the White House last Wednesday, yesterday with the vice president. And I think the good news is we're heading in the right direction here.
What would it take to get you to be a yes? What would it take?
The initial concept was,
okay.
Well, so the initial concept was 2 bills this year, within the first couple months. I think what we'll probably end up with is do this bill and then do the work. Do the forensic auditing analysis of every line of the federal budget, the more than 2,600 programs. That's what we're discussing right now, and probably do another bill using the fiscal 2026 budget process, budget reconciliation. So again, we're in those discussions right now. The ball's only been in the Senate court for 1 week, and we're having very productive conversations right now. So again, I'm optimistic, but in the end, we have to address the debt and deficit issue. The good news is that's what all Republicans want to do. We may have different strategies on how to do it, but what we're doing, Stuart, is very hard.
The Senate nixes the increase in the SALT deduction.
Well, I would tell you the Senate is not really excited about the SALT deduction piece. It's $353 billion of additional cost on the federal taxpayers. Taxpayers in Oklahoma, for their federal tax, will literally pay a higher tax amount than taxpayers in New York or in California. We're not excited about that. We want to be able to say, if you live in a high tax state, the option for you is to move out of a high.
Right. Such an important. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, you went frozen for a second, but please continue. You say the option is to move out of a high tax state.
Yeah, move out of a high tax state, not punish low tax states on it, like my state in Oklahoma. I understand that there are a few House members that they're very, very passionate about that. We're respectful of that. But it's $353 billion. We're trying to be able to find a way to solve that without punishing every other state.
Yeah, great point there. Now, the lesson in places like Seattle and Chicago.
Look, I'm a proud combat veteran, and after my active duty time, I served with the National Guard in Iowa. It's some great young men and women who are standing up to defend their community when they've been called on not by their governor or even asked by their mayor, but by the president himself, because he heard from folks on the street. Americans needed help. The commissioner of the LAPD said there was violence on the street, and the governor was not responding. President Trump took the right step to make sure that our men and women in blue were backed up by men and women in fatigues. This is going to be true for any state in the country that allows this kind of danger, where people will burn cars, commit arson, and instill anarchy while waving foreign flags, while American businesses are looted, law enforcement bleeds, and the American flags are torn down. Look, there is
Newsom foolishly said yesterday, the president's having a parade for his birthday. It's about the Army, and it's about Flag Day, and it happens to be the president's birthday. And this idea was actually brought up by the Army, by General George, when President Biden was president, but it was going to be much smaller. Can you shed light on that?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two things here that just I find preposterous. Thing one is as if the Army 170 years before the president was even born could have lined this up to be his birthday. It's just insanity to me that they are pushing back on this idea that we want to celebrate our 250th anniversary with an entity and a body that has done so much for this nation and that so many people have this incredible connection to. And then the second thing is, to your point, the Army started planning this long in advance because what we believe is this will continue the strength in recruiting and retention that we have as young Americans across the country get to see all of the amazing things that the Army has done, whether it's helping with floods in North Carolina or wildfires in California, or we talked to an astronaut yesterday who's on the moon, who's a soldier, including actually going to war and fighting to defend the freedoms that make our nation so great. We think this is going to be an incredible opportunity for the Army to fill up our pipeline for the years to come. And I find it offensive that anybody is challenging that.
Right. The President of the United States went to Fort Bragg, and by the way, he was able to announce recruiting goals are 100% of where they should be. They're surpassing all types. I know Marines were staying with it, but now the rest of the branches have caught up. That must be a good feeling. How is the president received at Fort Bragg? And how is the news resonating with the military community that all the names are going back to their original names before they were changed for political correctness?
I think if you watch the videos of the president speaking before soldiers, like you can see he just has this incredible connection as commander in chief with his Army. They were absolutely thrilled when the president made that announcement. You just heard roars across the thousands of soldiers that we had in there listening to him. And I think every single soldier, or nearly everyone I have talked to, remarks how it just feels so different today than it did a year ago, and that they feel like they actually have a leader who wants them to be the most lethal fighting force in the entire world. And that's why these men and women sign up and join to fight and maybe die on our behalf.
So, Gavin,